Your true identity is a king, but what's all this baggage that you're carrying? What's all this distractions that you have? So one of the challenges I'll give is be careful what you intake. Be careful what you listen to. Be careful what you watch. Be careful who's in your circle. Be careful how you spend your time. You'll manifest the things that you can't look at. What you give attention to is what you'll become. I don't have Netflix. I don't have Amazon. I don't have Disney. I just don't have those distractions in my life. We got rid of the TV. I got rid of streaming services. It was a distraction. Either you can watch and absorb like a fictional series or maybe a documentary, or you can focus on reading a book, meditating, exercising, spending love time with your spouse. There's a lot of different things that you can actually pour into yourself to increase your value. And by increasing your value, you take your rightful place on the throne of your kingdom. If you don't treat your life like it's your kingdom, someone else will take it.
Hey y'all, Josh Tomeoni with the Derelict Podcast. Welcome back. We're so glad you're here. Would you do me a favor? It will only take you a couple seconds. Whether you're listening or watching right now, will you head on over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button? It really helps us get this message to more and more people that we can help. Greatly appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for being here and enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the Derelict Podcast. For the disparaged, depleted, and delinquent souls trying to find our way, we're talking about the scary part of the journey, where we don't know how it'll end. Let's be free to face our fucking failures in real time as the most unadulterated, truest version of who we are. No sugarcoating. Welcome to the shit show, you derelict.
Hey there, you derelicts. It's Josh Tomeoni, host of the Derelict Podcast. Welcome to another episode. We have Jonathan Kurien here today, who's a dad, a husband, a wealth coach, a health coach, specifically for men. So if you're a woman, get off the channel right now. I'm just kidding. But he believes in helping men into a power inside them to unleash whatever is holding inside of you. Get rid of those limiting mindsets, get rid of those beliefs, get rid of anything that is keeping you from the king that you are designed to be. I love that you say that, Jonathan. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Josh. Pleasure to join you on this podcast. My deepest holidays wishes to everyone watching. I'm so glad that you're here with Josh and me. We're going to uncover some treasures. Like you always wondered where you could look. I'm telling you, at the Derelict Podcast, you'll find it. If you're
Thank you,
wondering
Jonathan. That's
where
very
you'd
kind of you.
dude, Josh, I love you, but I'm just telling the truth, right? I mean, I've listened to this podcast and follow along, because the one thing missing in this world, you'll find right here in that podcast. It's how to lead your family, how to get closer to God, how to lead your children, and how to be successful in your business. Hands down, don't miss out. We're just getting started.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you very much. I'll send you the Venmo now for that lovely endorsement. Just so everybody knows too, Jonathan and I haven't even known each other for very long. We actually met through coaching because we're both coaches. And of course, if you're a coach and you don't have a coach, then you are a hypocrite. So we actually met through a coaching program that we are learning from. And it's been really good getting to know you, brother. And obviously, this is the first time recording a podcast. And I have a feeling there's going to be more in the future, because this is just, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
And you talk a little bit about too. So, you talk a little bit about the holidays, which as of the time of this recording is now, as of the time of this release, will be a little bit ago.
Yep.
But there's always these dates, right? These times that maybe impact people more than others. So first, let's get to like what we're actually going to talk about. So one of the things that we're going to talk about that I would encourage everybody listening, because Jonathan has some really good stuff to talk about here. And that is, how do you get to that next level? So why would somebody like a coach or a mentor, somebody like that, how are they able to help you get there? Why do they do it? You might be wondering, again, if I'm a coach, why do I have a coach? If Jonathan's a coach, why does he have a coach? Well, guess what? Because we all need coaches. Every single one of us. Even if you're in sports, the top coach in whatever sport you like, whatever sports ball you like. I always sound like somebody who doesn't like sports when I talk sometimes. I
It's
do love
okay.
sports.
Yeah.
But even if you're a coach at the top, you're still getting coached from other coaches. How do you think that they got there? They got coached from other coaches, and then other coaches continue to coach them. It's amazingly true. And I've never heard of any coach that doesn't have a coach, not one, that is
Josh,
actually living out reality, right?
I think the pursuit for us now is to level up on coaches,
Mm.
right? Once you learn from your mentor and absorb it, create a bond and a relationship with that mentor slash coach. And then the coach on the next level, right? Get your coach's coach to coach you. And then you continue to climb that ladder. And I think, for me, like for me and you, we have the same coach because we're at that same level climbing. And so I have a vision in mind to get a one-on-one by one of my favorite coaches, you know, and he coaches our current coach, you know.
I know exactly who you're talking about then. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
yeah, you manifest that.
yeah, just
Manifest that.
work hard. I mean, that coach is already in my network, so it's just a matter of time before I gain that attention and say, hey, I'm ready to go all the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And his
Right.
name is not Ned Bilet. It's close though.
It's not Ned Violet.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I've been manifesting for a bit. I mean, I'm single and I've been manifesting for a bit how to start dating Miley Cyrus. And I'm
There
trying to
you
figure that
go.
out still. So it's amazing what manifestation can do, though, if you don't try. So that actually brings up the point
Yeah.
because we could just goof off for the entire hour,
Yeah,
obviously.
we could. We should
But
have done that.
we want to give the viewer something to pay attention to that they're going to like. All right, let's go to this for a second. You
Okay.
talk a little bit about how you're helping men become the king they were designed to be. So
Right.
maybe let's just start with this.
Yeah.
In a world where men are often told that they're worthless, chauvinistic, toxic, they should not live out their true masculinity, and in fact, they should just increase their femininity, shut down their masculinity. How could that guy possibly become a king? Tell me what's wrong with that and what you see men being as kings.
Right. So I'm going to tell you something, and you're probably not going to want to hear it. You're about a breakup, a broke moment, a shattering reality away from finding out that you're a king. A lot of people can't take that step yet because they haven't been broken to. Some guys enter my coaching program and I have to break them. I mean, not in a bad way, but in a way that shakes their reality. Because from tension comes change. And see, without that moldable moment, you never become who you're destined to be. I don't know if you read the book Iron John, Josh, but it's a great one.
It's
And
actually on my table upstairs as one of the next ones to read because
my
I have
gosh,
a whole bunch of masculinity books that I
I'll
haven't
try
gotten
not
to.
to
Several
ruin
that I
it.
have read, several that I'm about to. Yeah.
I'll try not to ruin it. But
Robert Bly, right?
yeah, Robert Bly, dude, that unlocked the man in me. I can tell you that from there, I was able to become a coach to men.
Hmm.
And that's because so oftentimes we're designed in a way that we're not living out currently. And so your true identity is a king. But what's all this baggage that you're carrying? What's all this distractions that you have? And so one of the challenges I'll give the listeners today is be careful what you intake. Be careful what you listen to. Be careful what you watch. Be careful who's in your circle, right? Be careful how you spend your time. Because, like Josh was saying, you'll manifest the things that you look at, right? What you give attention to is what you'll become. So it's a discipline, that's for sure. But the discipline is easily received if you have a coach to hold you accountable. Which, listen, I am 38. I have four sons, a beautiful wife named Cheryl. I have three dogs, Shadow, Shy, and Bella. One's a Rottweiler, the other one's a Chihuahua Terrier rescues. So it wasn't until, I was driving. I went to, got a psychology degree, got a ministerial degree, got a medical degree, and I ran multi-million dollar business. And all of that, I still didn't get it. I think that that breaking point for me was having that accountability. At the lowest moment of my life, I looked for help. And when I looked for help, oh my gosh, now I have four different coaches in my life, and it's amazing. I mean, I can't tell you that everything's hunky dory, but I can definitely tell you that all the aspects of my life is on track because I mapped it out and I'm working diligently, consistently, and committed towards those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, I decided a while ago that my mission in life
Mm.
is to be the man that I needed in my darkest of days.
Oof,
I stole
really
that
good.
because everything good is worth stealing, right?
Yeah,
But it's
100%.
true. But I
Yeah,
but I didn't just steal it. I stole it and I own it.
yeah,
And every time I have a difficult day or where there's something challenging that pops up, or I'm starting to have limiting mindsets or beliefs of whatever it is that I'm doing or what I'm not doing right or what's not
right,
working the way I want it to work,
right.
fill in the blank, I always remind myself of that. And I remind myself of how do I do that in this moment? So instead of looking at my bank account and getting upset or sad that it's not the number that I want it to be or whatever,
Mm.
that has nothing to do with what I just said my mission was. So for me, it's if I can remember that, that's what snaps me out of it. I'm like, well, then it doesn't matter. How can I now, right this second, go find somebody that I can help that I needed that help with? Because frankly, my story, and I'm curious about yours as well, but my story is when I've gone through, I would say the biggest difficulties of my life, number one is
Mhm.
still the divorce.
Got it.
And then number 2 through 10 is everything else. It's all behind there. Relationship changes, business
Sure,
failures, running
sure.
out of money completely, like all the different things. I've gone through everything.
The house
None of
being
them were as big
flooded,
as that one. But
right?
when I went through all those really difficult ones for most of my life, I didn't have a coach. And it almost ruined me. I don't know how people do it without somebody mentoring and coaching them through.
But yeah, what ends up happening is they get into a cycle and they might get out of it, but they'll fall right back in. And I see it with, so in health coaching, right? People are like, no, I don't need your services. I don't need a coach. And then, they try, and year after year, they gain weight, lose weight, gain weight, lose weight, gain weight. It's just a cycle. In order to break the cycle, you need an outside perspective that allows you to accelerate through those issues,
Mm,
right? I mean, they're only your limiting beliefs. They're not your coach's limiting beliefs.
it's true. It's absolutely true. And like I have a really, you mentioned this earlier, and you mentioned the fact that most success also comes from the top people that you have around you, which is very true. That Harvard study that has anyone that hasn't read it is fascinating about how 90% of your success is directly correlated to the 5 people that are the most active in your life. That's
Yep.
insane. So think
Oh,
about
dude,
that for a second. If you have 5 people that are sitting around smoking pot, watching, playing video games and eating potato chips all day long, guess what you're going to be doing?
doing that.
It's not crazy. If you
Yeah,
surround yourself with people that are trying to move themselves up to the next level, that are, trying to go to the next thing, then that's what you're going to do, right?
percent. Yep. I mean, you manifest it, right? So before, my network were mostly gym bros, because I was a bodybuilder and doing these competitions and going for Olympia. But now I realize that my circle needs to be business. There are three friends that you can have: friends that you have fun with, business friends, and mentors, confidants. I can say that 20% is mentors, about 75% are business friends, and about 5% are friends I have fun with. And I'm not saying this is for everybody. I know people like to have fun. I'm not against having fun. I love having fun, but I love having fun with my children. You know, that's my downtime. Like that's my time to release and sit down and watch movies. I don't have Netflix. I don't have Amazon. I don't have Disney. I mean, I just don't have those distractions in my life. We got rid of the TVs out of the house last year. I got rid of streaming services in 2024. I mean, why are you making why are you making someone else rich?
Yeah, but why did you get rid of it?
It was a distraction.
From what?
Let me tell you, let me put it this way, right? Either you can watch and absorb like a fictional series or maybe a documentary, which I don't disagree with. I like documentaries. Or you can focus on reading a book, meditating, exercising, spending love time with your spouse one on one, right? There's a lot of different things that you can actually pour into yourself to increase your value. And by increasing your value, you take your rightful place on the throne of your kingdom. See, if you don't treat your life like it's your kingdom, someone else will take it. Somebody else wants to take it. It's our priority to defend it, life or death. That's it. So wake up, kings. It's time to get after it.
And what you're saying too right now, Jonathan, also it's true of so many things. Like
Yeah.
as guys, I think sometimes we just like go to work mode and it's all about work and it's all about
Yeah.
business and career and that sort of thing because that's just easy for us to do because generally speaking, it's harder for us to think about this when in terms of relationships as an example. But the same thing is true as in a relationship, whether you're talking about a friendship or a romantic relationship. Like take you and I'm single, so it doesn't apply to me as much, but you and your wife, a good
Yeah.
example. If you don't nurture that relationship and you don't build up that relationship, there's a much higher probability she will eventually say, because somebody else is going to come in and do the same thing. Because
Right.
if you don't do it, somebody's going to do it.
Yep.
Same
And
thing
we
is true
all
with friendships, right?
Yep. Yep.
Or same thing is true vice versa. I've had the opposite happen where I felt like I wasn't getting, the support or the nurturing or whatever that I needed. I'm like, okay, bye.
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
it happens, but I think being equipped with the right tools, if you enjoy work as a man, right? Which most guys do. They love going to work because that's what we were created to do. We were created to work. I spend, I don't know, maybe 12, 14 hours a day working because I'm a business owner and I have a lot of things in the fire. But now what I realized was if I can change my mindset to look at my relationships like work, oh my gosh. Now I'm like, it's like a hack or like I'm trying to problem solve it. I mean, I don't really go tell my wife, okay, I'm going to try to problem solve you because that's the last thing, she wants to hear. She wants to just she doesn't want to hear anything from me actually. She just wants to talk, which I love to sit there and listen to her talk, because when she's going, she's going. And when she's not, she's not. So when she's going, I give her free reign and the full runway. But just to speak on it for a moment, one of the tools that has really helped me with my relationships is the five love languages, right? Which, Josh, I know you're familiar with too. But it not only applies to your wife, but it applies to your kids too. It applies to your friends as well, right? And I'm not telling you to create an Excel spreadsheet about it or anything, but if you can understand what each relationship requires and feed into it, make a priority list and start feeding into those relationships just the way that they desired, man, your love bucket will be so full. Whatever you desired as a king will come to pass. But as kings, we are to serve first. It's
So touch on that a little bit more. What does that
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah. I don't like, I know that the males have this kind of ego, right? There's good ego and bad ego, right? Definitely, good ego is necessary for us to succeed in life, but bad ego can adversely affect our relationships. And so thinking that you are more than you are is always going to hurt you. So, my perspective now, because I've learned from some great authors and other great books, is wait in position and serve your kingdom. Your people will elevate you and say, that's your seat on the throne. Go take it. But till then, don't sit there and dictate people. And Josh, I don't know if that's what you were expecting, but I think the one of the things that stuck with me over the past 2 decades is servant leadership. I don't know if you heard of that term before, but
Yeah,
servant.
no, I definitely have, but I want you to unpack it a little bit. And here's the reason why is because I think based on, from my experience, the men that I've coached, including myself and even friends and everything else,
Yeah,
there can be some different connotations to what you're talking about right now,
got it.
which can also be taken very, very negatively because
Okay, I see.
this is kind of what I want you to touch on. So these are the obvious examples, right? You have the very, very egotistical, narcissistic person that doesn't care about anybody or anything as long as they're not adding to his agenda. And then you have kind of the codependent servant who is just constantly getting walked all over and is a doormat and doesn't really do anything because they just feel like they always have to give to everybody else. And I know you're not talking about either one of those, but touch on where the servant leader is, because this guy, this narcissistic, egotistical person could actually be a really good leader in a lot of
Yeah,
ways
yeah, yeah. I
because he's
mean,
full of himself and he's like, yeah, we're going to do this. And he could be a visionary, etc. This guy could actually be a really good servant. He might be constantly giving people other things and helping them,
of
etc.
course.
But neither one of those are
Yeah,
kings.
yeah. So you need a little bit of each one of those, truly, right? So obviously, one extreme is not better than the other, right? But I think, in truth, you need that good ego, right? You need kind of a codependency on your loved ones so you guys can build it together or to build a business together, right? And you need to be kind of subservient to the desires of your people. See, speaking on all levels, like my vision is to give the entire world clean water, right? And that's my driving force. But if I don't serve the things of today, I'll never get to that goal. And so I use that as a tool and a stepping stone to get to that vision, that dream, that desire, right? And in the same way that the codependency, as men, we can be solo all day, you know? I mean, Josh, I know you've been good for a couple of years, and currently, I've not separated from my wife, but we're living apart as I'm building a business here in Houston and she's up in Chicago, spending the holidays with the in-laws and, having fun with the cousins. And we homeschool as well. So, but it allows me to build with a dream and a vision. But I always consult her because I'm dependent on her, right? But in the same way, I'm that egotistical guy because I'm not going to stop. Nothing is going to hold me back. The challenges that I face day in and day out, it's an opportunity for me to flex, just let it know, hey, not in my house. So on all the levels, I think we need to be one of those things. But I can't honestly say that picking one or the other is a wise decision. See, what I learned
Well,
recently.
so let me maybe clarify something for a second. So
Okay.
because
Okay.
I don't agree with you that we should be codependent at all, but I
Okay.
think we agree probably on maybe the same thing I'm about to say. I don't know.
Okay, tell me.
You can tell me if you disagree. So we need to be interdependent, but
Yes.
interdependence is different than codependent. So interdependence is that I'm a strong person. I know myself. I'm living out my authentic self. You're a strong person. You're living out yourself. You're living out your authentic self. And then we can rely on each other. We
Yeah.
can team up together. We can do those sort of things. But I don't need you
Correct.
to do something in order for me to be confident myself. Now, that is much easier said than done. Just like I always do on this podcast, I'll be vulnerable and be the first person to say that I have limiting beliefs, mindsets, insecurities every single day of my life. I just do. And I have to fight through them.
You got it.
My namesake is Joshua, and my parents named me after the Joshua in the Jewish scriptures. And that dude is the most courageous dude probably ever written about ever in history. I mean, the guy was insane.
Mm-hmm.
Some people might not like his tactics or like what they say God told him to do. That's a whole other conversation that we could get into. Maybe I'll do a whole podcast about that actually
we can
sometime.
do another one on that one. Yeah.
But here's the interesting thing. If you've ever read anything about Joshua, one of the interesting things is whether you're religious or not is immaterial. If you've read any religious scriptures, and let's just use the Bible for it first as an example, one of the things you'll notice about Joshua is there's not anything written negative about him, like that he did negative. No failures, no ways that he went against God, nothing. That's a high fucking bar. Like, I don't know. I'm just going to constantly fail at trying to hit that bar. So I think my point in bringing that up is and he was interdependent on other people too in his life, just like we all have to be. But I want my life to be in a place where I can have healthy ego, I can have healthy confidence, I can live out who I believe that I am. That also then turns into helping other people, because you cannot live authentically without serving and helping other people. It's impossible. So I can do all those things without getting stepped on, without allowing other people to take control of me, without making it so that my circumstances have to be a certain way for me to do something. I was coaching a guy the other day. This is what this reminds me of. And I basically just asked him, I said, so he started the call basically by saying, "Hey, I'm doing better. I feel like I'm in a better headspace. Like I'm feeling positive, these sort of things." And then he started listing off all the different circumstances in his life that made him feel that way. And I basically just let him talk for like 5 minutes. And it was just like, well, things are going better with my wife, and like we're having better sex, and I've been able to spend more time with my kids, and work has been less crazy because it's the end of the year and everybody's just like okay with things that are going on. And so he's listing off all these circumstantial reasons why he's doing well. And after the entire 5 minutes of him doing this, I just looked at him and I said, okay, now tell me why your life is going well, irregardless of circumstance.
Right.
Because if we can't get to that place, this, you're a coach. If I can't get to a point where my life is good because I have gratitude and because I'm looking at the positives in my life and because of the fact that I'm focused on all the amazing blessings and how grateful I am and everything else, and I'm not comparing myself to all the people I want to compare myself to that are better at me than some reason, if I'm able to just do that, man, that's a beautiful life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, realizing your own identity is one of the most powerful things anyone can ever come across.
How do you do that?
Hard work and discipline.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
so
let's get more specific. How do you do it with your
break it
client?
down.
Yeah.
So I do like a 12-step coaching process, right? So it's really addressing your ego and your ambition and your desires, right? And then I move into a realm of your body, right? So your body, you don't have to be ripped and shredded, but you need to be on the path to be healthy. You need to be on the path to have longevity, right? And then through that, why? Because your destiny is to have impact.
No, I understand. I understand that. But
Yeah.
for the guys that are listening right now that are maybe out of shape, or maybe they're fat, or maybe they're obese, or maybe they're just whatever, have a little extra pudge or whatever. And they just tell themselves, 'cause, by the way, that again, first hand up, I'm sure you too, Jonathan, but I've struggled with weight in my life as well. At one point I was, let's see, what am I right now? At one point I was 50 pounds heavier than I am right now. Some of that was muscle, but a lot of it was fat. So
Sure.
I understand what that's like. That's been years because I've trained myself since then, but I've fluctuated a lot.
Yeah.
Even within the last year, I've fluctuated a little bit. So I understand what this is. So this is not a judgment statement,
No,
but
it
I
isn't.
just want to know, I've talked to so many guys that are like, they just kind of accept it and justify that it's not that big of a deal. What I'm asking you is tell them why. Why is it a big deal?
So the reason is this. So I went to medical school before I became a coach. And so one of the things that I've learned that really inspired me to be like, hey, this is the reason I'm here. This is the reason I'm alive. This is the reason I want to help men become kings is every inch you lose on your waist, you're 10% less likely to have cancer, heart attack, hypertension, diabetes, and a numerous amount of other diseases.
Wow.
Now, you tell me why you want to get cancer. Now, if you don't have a good reason, go to the gym.
That's very
Now,
fair.
let me tie it in though. Let me tie it in because obviously, there's more to it, right? See, now when you uncover who you are and the identity that you have, I can tell you right now, you wasted so much time because you weren't living in it already. And so now you've uncovered who you were destined to be since day one when you came into this world. You need to drive yourself to make up lost time. I mean, I find myself in that situation as soon as I got a coach and I uncovered my identity, I was like, what was I doing? Sitting around with some Rastafarians. What was I doing? Traveling the world. I can tell you that I wasn't doing what I needed to be doing. And so now I know what it is to create a legacy. And see, once you sit down and dreamscape in your identity about your legacy and you make a map, you have to work hard to get there. And there's no time that's enough. And so what you'll find is without the health, you'll never get the wealth. And without the wealth, you'll never have the impact.
That's very true. It's very true. I'll be vulnerable and honest about something that I don't think I've shared on this podcast yet. And that was so before we even launched the podcast, me and a buddy launched the podcast together. But before the day that it launched was 7 months after we had our first conversation about it. So that alone is interesting.
Time.
But in that conversation, the first one that we had, it ended up being a part of the first episode. So if anyone wants to go back and listen to the first episode of the Derelict podcast, good luck. The audio quality is awful. The content is not that great. It's hard to listen to. There's no video. We've come a long way, thank
You're
God.
awesome.
which is great. Like I've had to learn it myself. I don't know how to do any of this stuff, right? And now it's professional and everything else. But here's my point. My point is not the fact that it's gotten better, patting myself on the back. Here's the point. The point is, not that long ago, it was, probably 4 or 5 months ago as of this recording, maybe longer. I went back and I listened to it. And I've been coaching men for years, but I hadn't launched the coaching business I wanted to launch yet at this time. And I was just about I was finally convincing myself like it's time to do it. I went back and I listened to that recording, and guess what? A year ago, I spoke my specific mission, vision, purpose, exactly what I wanted the coaching business to be. And then had a year of whatever I was doing because I have so many hats that I'm wearing. And then when I decided to launch it, it was the exact same as what I said a year prior. How amazing is that?
That's incredible.
It's incredible. And it also, I really had to struggle with kind of the shame of like, dude, you just wasted a year, bro. You
Can I
literally
ask?
already knew you were supposed to do this a year ago, and
I
you got
mean,
scared and you had fear and
yeah.
you got distracted and all the other things that we do all the time. And I know I'm not the only one out there, but man, and I'm a type A, like get it done type of person. And it still happened to me. It was actually kind of shocking. And I guess the reason I'm mentioning this for all you listeners, viewers that are watching this, here's another reason why it's important to just document your life, journal, write things down, have different goals, etc. So you can go back and look at them and realize, because for me, that was just more encouragement of like, dude, you can't wait another day. Like you have to do this right now. You already talked about doing this a year ago. You already knew that that was your mission and your vision, your purpose, everything a year ago. So just do it. Like, what is holding you back?
So, Josh, where did the year go?
The year went with distractions, limiting mindsets, fears, insecurities.
What was your biggest distraction?
I don't know if I could name just one. There was two.
Oh yeah, top two. Perfect.
I'll give you the top two. The top one probably was lack of focus. So
That would hit me hard too.
yeah.
Yeah.
So focus, I've heard, stands for focus on one course until successful. Okay, that's focus. I was focused on several courses. I was focused on my financial planning company. I was focused on my new coaching company. I was focused on the podcast. I was focused on the book that I'm writing. I was focused on the screenplay that I'm writing. I mean, I could go on. Too many things. Too distracted focus. And for an entrepreneur, ADHD dude, not a good idea to be distracted because it's just going to all go out the window. And along with that focus, maybe this is actually the same one, but I called it number 2 because that I would say is mainly related to work, career, and mission. The second focus was relational focus that was distracting me. So I had a girlfriend at the time that we had a great relationship. I'm very grateful for it. There's nothing, this is not to come on here and say anything bad about that. However, for me, it delineated my focus even more because I was thinking about her. I was thinking about what we were doing. I was thinking about, what I wanted to get out of the relationship, what I wanted to give to her, how it could serve her, all the different things that happen when you're in a relationship, which again is not a bad thing, but it wasn't where my focus should have been. And she was not the right partner to go along with that journey with me. And it took me a long time to figure that out because I'm also a very loyal person. So by the time I really realized it, I just didn't want to admit it. I minimized it. And I was like, nah, it's fine. It'll work out because I loved her so much. And then eventually I got to a point where I'm like, I can't do this any longer. Like we're not on this journey together. So either we're going to get on the journey together or I'm getting off the bus. And I finally had to get off the bus.
So yeah, my dad gave me one of this great examples when I started dating. He said, if 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, don't stick with her.
Mm.
And I was like, dang,
What does he mean
always
by
tried.
that? What else would it equal?
Well, so if 1 + 1, right, at the other side of that equal sign is still 1 + 1, there was no addition that happened.
I
There was
get what you're
no
saying.
addition
Yeah.
to each other's lives.
Right.
Right? The math just didn't work out. He was an electrical engineer. He invented caller ID. So
Oh, really? Wow. Cool.
that was his way to communicate, right? So I mean,
It's so true. It's so true. And again, if there's any other guys out there or gals that are listening to this that are like me, that want to hope that something's going to work, like where I fall often in relationships, I'll just speak for myself for a moment. Where I fall often in relationships, and this could be friendships, it could be romantic relationships, etc., is that I'm a pretty hopeful person. I'm a pretty optimistic person. I'm a pretty I'm going to figure it out type of person. That can be really negative in relationships sometimes. Because sometimes what happens with me is that I get so hopeful and purposeful and it'll work out that I ignore why it's not working out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh yeah, totally. Totally. I
And
mean,
then I see glimpses of it working out. So I'm like, see, and then I point to that, and it's like 1% of the time, and I'm ignoring the other 99% of the time it's not working out. I'm like, see, it's working out. Same things happen in business, everything else, where I'm like, yeah, look, it's not. It's okay to admit it's not working, because if it's not working for you, for everyone in a relationship right now, just hear me for a second. This is not your carte blanche to exit your relationship. Don't do that. There's too much of that happening in this world. Stay faithful, stay in your relationship as much as possible. Even though I just am telling you about this experience, I'm not a cynical human being thinking I'm never going to be in a relationship again, because that's bad. People leave relationships way before they should because they're not willing to do any work. But here's what I will say to you, though. If you keep trying and trying and trying and trying and trying and beating your head against the wall and trying to figure out how to become a better human being, etc., and you've been doing that for years, it might be time to leave.
yeah,
It just might, because it takes two to tango. Both of you have to be in that. Like you just said, Jonathan, that's so key. If my person, so one of the reasons I actually like the term partner, I think it gets overused and it's kind of weird and people don't necessarily always mean it, but I do like it in general as a concept, because the concept is, if I'm with somebody, they better be my damn partner and I better be their damn partner, because otherwise, why are we here?
yeah. No. Agree. I mean, if you guys are living together as roommates, there's something wrong.
Absolutely. Whether you're married, unmarried, doesn't matter. None of that
But yeah,
stuff matters. It just
yeah,
matters, like, what are you actually encouraging each other, being on a team together, figuring out this life together? Do you have the same morals, the values, the same mission, the same vision? And by the way, that also changes. The other really difficult thing for me about relationships is realizing that, like, where I started in the relationship might not be where I am right now, because I might have changed so dramatically over the last year, and she did maybe a different way, that we might be doing this. And
oh
just
yeah,
getting to a point where I'm realizing, like, oh, okay, I guess that it's okay if we're not together, if we're not going to be on the same page. It just is. And there's I think what used to happen, from what I've seen, I obviously wasn't alive in times like the 50s. Clearly, neither one of us were.
right,
But people tended to stay together a lot longer, especially marriages, that sort of thing back then.
right. I mean, there were less distractions.
There were less distractions, but I wouldn't, I think it's dangerous to go and say that those relationships were healthier than they are
No,
today.
I think nowadays we have much higher EQ. So our communication has become a lot better, and our roles as partners have also been better defined in a healthy way and an unhealthy way. So then we're actually able to accelerate our family or relationship into a place where you're multiplying rather than just adding, right? And that's a legacy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And however, one of the downsides of that is that, at least back then, people would stick it out. And they're like, hey, we're going to figure it out. We're going to make it work, et cetera.
Right.
Now, the negative of that is that they might be sticking through something that was bad for them, that was abusive or non-partnership, et cetera. But now the tendency is just like, oh, you looked at me sideways? See ya.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know relationships that also are on the other end are in a really, really bad place, but they're sticking it out, and they're working through it in somewhat of an unhealthy way, right? And so in that, right, if you listener, if you're in that situation where you're in a relationship and your spouse has done something inappropriate with another, I would suggest that you guys seek help, right? This is one of that moments where coaching goes a long way. And truly, it's not ever the other person. I mean, there are instances where it's the other person, but if you look inwards and work on yourself, you'll come to a perspective where you can make the right decision. If you're making the decision from a place of pain or hurt, I don't think you've used the right discernment,
Well, I think
which
what
means,
you just said is really key too, because I know for myself, where coaches have been really helpful for me is specifically when I'm in a state where I can admit maybe that I'm not thinking clearly, or maybe I don't even realize that I'm not thinking clearly. And somebody can come along, and a coach is different than a friend in this too. Let's talk about that for a second,
Okay, sure.
because I have a really great group of friends. I have really good guys that hold me accountable to things. And the
Sure.
men that I've chosen to surround myself with these days are not the men I surrounded myself with a decade ago. Because the men I surrounded myself with a decade ago, it was either on the work side or it was on the party side. Now it's like, no, we have mission, vision. We're going the same way. Like, I only want to be around guys that we're elevating together. Like you, Jonathan. Good example,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
let's elevate together. Because if we're not elevating together, I don't care about grabbing another beer in a pub somewhere. That gives me no value in my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't remember what my point was. Oh yeah, my point was, even though sometimes I think friends it's a little too close to be able to have that coaching ability. Like, I know for a fact, as myself being a coach, when my coach hat comes on with friends, I often get called out from them. They're like, oh, okay, Coach Josh is here. I'm like, okay, fine. If you want to listen to Coach Josh, if not, like, people pay me a lot of money to listen to Coach Josh, but because you know me, you don't want to listen to anything I say. But it's true, because I feel the same way. If a friend of mine starts coaching me, sometimes that's actually really hard to hear. And I think the main reason why is because there's so much of a more connected relationship there. So to
And
me, where
yeah,
coaches have been really, really helpful, more so than therapists, to be honest, and we could have a whole nother conversation about that, but
sure.
is because they cut through the bullshit so quickly.
Yeah.
It's just so quick. Like, if I have a coach where I'm talking about something that's happening, it's, in fact, we're part of a coaching program together, which is where we met. And it actually happened when this guy was selling me on his coaching services before I joined. I gave him a lot of excuses as to, like, why things didn't happen. And before
Yeah.
we even met, before we even had a conversation, this is literally just written communication, he called me out on it.
Yeah.
Because I said
'Cause you
something to
see
the
it.
effect of, like, well, I have multiple businesses and I'm like a single dad half the time. I'm not a single dad, but when I have my
Yeah.
kids, it's just me that has all
Yeah.
three of my kids. So that there's a lot of time there. And I'm like kind of making all these excuses for why things haven't happened. And I remember what he said. He just said, what does that have to do with anything?
Right.
And it really just threw me back, where I was like, you're right. There are men that have more businesses, more time with their kids, less help, and less money than me that are figuring out and that are making it work. But my friend won't necessarily say that to me. My friend, a lot of the time, will just be like, oh yeah, and they'll have sympathy or empathy for you and be like, oh yeah, that's really rough and that's difficult,
Yeah.
etc. That's not helpful, or not as helpful.
So kind of what you're talking about is having the difference between a friend and a coach, right? And so I honestly believe that it's not some of our friends are not what we need, you
Hmm.
know? And so I've actually approached one of my really close friends about that yesterday. I was just like, hey, be careful of your friend circle,
Hmm.
right? If they're not adding value, they're taking it. And it needs to be a mutual relationship. If they're breaking you down, if they have negative talk, if they have poor influences as well, it'll bleed over into your life. And so I'm very selective. This is what I told them. And I know this is going to sound really
Just
cold.
say it. Just say it. We
Yeah.
don't care how it's
Yeah.
going to sound. Just do it.
Yeah. You don't need friends.
Hmm.
You need coaches. And if the friends that you have don't support your goals to where you're going, dude, use social media. Fill your feed with motivational quotes, amazing speakers. The world is at your fingertips. Stop making excuses and live like a king. I make kings on the Instagram. Give me a follow.
No, that's great. Yeah. Yeah. So how do you want people to get a hold of you? That's a good, I was just going to bring that up,
Yeah.
Jonathan.
Yeah, so Instagram, I make kings, or you can schedule an appointment with me on my website, which is wealthwave.com/Jonathan.
Got it. So yeah, so reach out to Jonathan on Instagram. We'll put it in the show notes as well. So whether you're watching this on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, whatever, just go down there. Instagram, I make kings. If you message him the word derelict, he's going to know where you're coming from. So do that if you could. That way we all can keep track of where you're from. And we know that also will help Jonathan as far as what the conversation was, because he knows that you listen to this podcast and you kind of have an idea of what you want to talk to him about. So
Yep.
reach out to Jonathan for sure. So as we kind of wrap up here, Jonathan, we don't kind of wrap up, we are wrapping up. As we wrap up here, Jonathan, is there,
Yeah.
do you have a top message that you want to leave to the men out there about, specifically about this topic? And actually maybe before I ask that question, I'm going to ask it here in a second. I think what you just said is really, really key. And I want to come back to it just for a moment. And that is that we don't need friends. We need coaches.
Yeah.
I love that. I have gone through a process the last couple of years of my life where I have had to figure out, boundaries would be the word that a lot of people use. I could use guidelines as well, of how friends are in my life. So I'll give a couple of examples because maybe this will relate to people that are listening. I have a friend that is very difficult to be around. Everything's always negative. Everything's always somebody else's fault. Everything's always intention of wanting to do something and then never doing it. And it's extremely exhausting for me, especially as a coach, because I just want to coach him so bad. And oftentimes he's not open to hearing it.
I mean,
I've had to learn for myself how much time I can spend around him, the setting in which I can spend around him, to make
Right.
sure that I'm not getting dragged down to that level. So
Yeah.
I've had to decide with him, he can't be in my top 5. He just can't, unless that changes. And that's nothing against him. I want all the
Right.
best for him. I love him. I support him. I will answer the phone any single time he calls. However, I can't have him be in that top 5 because that's what I'm going to start looking like. There's another guy that I had this very difficult realization. He was one of my best friends. And we got into an argument about something. And he basically called me out for all the ways I was being a shitty friend, which frankly, I appreciated that he did that. Not at the time, but afterwards I did, because he was right.
Yeah.
He was right. He was absolutely right. I didn't agree with every single point, but 90% of it I did. So he was absolutely correct. However, when it was my turn, no responsibility whatsoever from the other side. And it wasn't until that moment where I realized this guy's never apologized to me.
Crazy.
He doesn't take responsibility for things. He's a great friend in so many different ways, but
Yeah.
I can't have somebody like that in my top 5. Same thing happened during that time frame in a romantic relationship. I realized the same thing. There was no taking responsibility. It was all intention, etc. And I realized I had to do some deep work, and this is what I would encourage all the listeners to do as well. Sit down. It's very simple. Sit down with a piece of paper and just write out what your ideal top 5 people look like. This could be a romantic relationship or partnership. It could also be your friends, but just write down what you would want to see and who you would want to be. And then figure out, are the top 5 people that you're spending the most time with, do they fit this category? If you realize the answer is no, this gives you an opportunity. So I love it, Jonathan. So let me give you an example. This guy I just told you about that I realized that he didn't do that. I didn't just walk away and say, fuck that guy, I'm never going to see him again. I gave him an opportunity. I went to him under good circumstances. I told him why. I was like, I want to have coffee with you. There's something about our friendship that I want to talk about, that I'm concerned with, etc. We sat down. I presented this to him. He told me it was presented in a good way. So like I wasn't defensive or emotional or anything. I presented this to him. And guess what? He still decided that he didn't do anything wrong, that he didn't need to change this aspect about himself. But I gave him the opportunity. And then after that moment, I just decided, great, then I know where you are. You're in like 6 to 10. I still want to spend time with you. I still want to hear about your life. I still want to connect every once in a while because we have a lot of history. I love you, etc. But you can't be in my top 5. And I didn't say that to him, obviously, but I just decided from that moment on.
Josh, do you think I can trump you for a second?
Absolutely.
And I love you. So, I mean, like, I'm coming from a place of love.
Please.
You need to let that person go to a level to when you see him next, you need to tell him, I don't know you.
Why is that? Why do you think it needs to be so extreme?
Because that's the level of your commitment and your acceleration towards your goals. See, if they're not serving you in the way that they come alongside of you in your vision, it's a buoy that you're holding on the back of your boat. Either you pull it up or you cut it out. And if you can't pull it up, you got to cut it out. You know what a buoy on a ship is? It's like one of those things that kind of hang back, right? Now the buoy doesn't really have, too much impact on the boat, but it's still an appendage that's out there. And by remaining contact with a friend or a person that's done you wrong, it's like giving that buoy an opportunity to slow you down. So either you take that buoy and put it on the ship with the rest of your crew, or you cut the buoy out and you never look back. I can tell you, once you cut the buoy out, you'll go faster, further, and for longer.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I agree with you, brother. I think the difficulty with what you're saying is that I don't feel like it needs to be so extreme, and maybe I'm wrong here, but here's the reason why. So like, let me give you 2 different examples, and then I know we got to wrap up here. These are the 2 examples that have happened in the last 2 years of my life. One was a romantic relationship, a partnership that I decided I needed to cut completely out of my life. And when I got to that decision with her, we have not communicated since.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that. That's a lie. Like, I think I sent her a happy birthday text just to say happy birthday, just to be polite. But there's been no communication. The only 2, actually, that's not even true. I'll just be completely honest about my 2 pieces of communication with her. I don't know why I'm holding this back right now, but I'm just going to go with it because this is just a moment where all of the audience gets to see that even I do this. So I'm just going to be completely honest. There were 2 times that I communicated with her afterwards. I said happy birthday to her because of the fact that I knew she was going through some shit. And I thought it would be nice for her to at least hear happy birthday from somebody that used to love and care for her. Okay. And the second thing was that I sent her an amends. The shit I did wrong in my relationship, because all I can do is take responsibility for myself. I can't take responsibility for her. Irregardless of what she did, didn't matter, right? But that relationship, I decided, I completely agree with you, that if I try to buoy this is not going to work well. I've worked with enough guys that try to be friends with their ex. Why? What value and service is that bringing to your life? Why are you being friends with them? Now, it's different if it's like your ex-spouse and you have kids together. Of course, try to be friends, try to be a good co-parent, etc. But if there's no connection there, why? What value is that bringing? We watch these TV shows where like these people are friends with their ex, like there's no emotional, there's no recourse whatsoever. Like everybody's just fine. That's bullshit. Everybody knows that's bullshit. Here's the thing though, Jonathan. Here's the thing that I'm struggling with. If I think of this other friend, there isn't like a toxic wrongdoing that he did to me and I'm just hanging on like this abused victim.
Okay.
It's more the fact that I realized that while being a good friend, while being supportive, he's actually been a really good coach for me in the past as well, going through different transitions of business and other things. I've even talked to him about it earlier this year as well. While doing all those things, I realized that the peak of our friendship, though, stopped at the point that I try my best to keep my side of the street clean and then make amends when I do stuff wrong. And he has a different mindset of that. He just has a different mindset of cleaning up the stuff, thinking like, well, I'm just going to kind of sweep it under and I'm not going to really pay attention to it. And it's like nothing really happened, right? So I think the thing I struggle with is cutting him off completely. Because to me, that doesn't make sense. I feel like there's too many positive aspects of our relationship where I can't have him in my inner circle because I can't have somebody that's not willing to own all their shit at all times in my inner circle. But could I have him in an outer circle where maybe we still connect every once in a while? Maybe I get some coaching. Maybe he does. I don't know. I think that's where I struggle. You think that's still?
I mean, it's on the borderline, right? Like you said,
Fair.
he's on your outer circle, so now it becomes dependent on how much time you give to that relationship.
Correct.
Right. And so if it's, a coffee once a year, I think that's healthy. If it's a coffee once a month, it's like, you stopping on a road trip, like you have a 12-hour road trip and you stop every hour. Now it's not a great idea, but if you need it, you need it, like,
well, I think what you just said is really powerful, because I also need to pay attention. I've seen plenty of guys do this. I've done it myself, where I can pretend or minimize the impact somebody's having on me. And it can be very deceiving. So to your point from the very beginning of this podcast, when thinking about what you're putting in your mind, it could be something as simple as music that is not elevating you, but it's keeping you in a certain emotion. We've all experienced that.
Always.
Because music is very emotionally powerful.
It is.
And if I'm kind of in this like lower, kind of saddened state, and I convince myself I want to be there, that's the type of music I listen to. And then I just stay in this state. I think the same thing applies to your point with friendships, with partnerships, with people that we're spending time with. We might be convincing ourselves, or I might be convincing myself that I'm actually growing and changing and with this person, et cetera. But I might just be like, I might feel comfortable down here because it's what I know.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time cutting that off because this is where I know.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are enabling each other, right? And that's the toxic part of the relationship. What I learned recently, Josh, was sometimes you got to be alone to grow.
Absolutely. 100%, man.
Yeah. And you will go.
The times of my life where I've grown the most usually has been right on the heels of me breaking up in a long-term relationship and then choosing I'm going to go be healthy. I'm going to work on myself right now, and I'm going to separate myself from my friends for a while in order to figure out what I need to learn right now. Now, I haven't always done that. Several other times I've decided to medicate and distract myself and do stupid shit that hasn't helped. But the times that I have done that, those have been the biggest learning times of my life by far.
Yeah. I mean, out there, I encourage you to do the same. Grab two individuals that you trust and that you bring into your corner, maybe a mentor or two, and go to the woods for a retreat for 3 to 4 days. I promise you, it'll be rejuvenating and life-giving.
I love that.
We got to take the moments in our life. Otherwise, when they go by, every year goes by quicker, right, Josh?
True. Absolutely, brother.
So
speaking of moments, we got to wrap this thing up as much as I'd want to talk to you for like 3 more hours. So everybody listening, connect with Jonathan on Instagram. Like I said, it's in the show notes. Just go right there, send him the word derelict, start a conversation about how he might be able to help you. And most importantly, again, a favor. This is needed. You need to do this, please. If you're listening or watching, I need you to do this. I need you to do 2 things for me. Number 1, please forward this to a man that popped in your head while you're listening to this, to a man that you thought either you appreciate them as a friend and you want them to hear everything that we're talking about, a man that you think needs some coaching, a man that needs to break through some limiting mindsets, beliefs, etc. Send it to them, please. Because if you don't, who's going to? And if you're their friend and you feel like you can't say anything in their life, great, let us do it. That's why we're here. So do that. The second thing I need you to do, please, if you did like this, then like it. Go on YouTube, whether you're on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you are right now, go on YouTube, like the episode. That keeps us continually doing these things. I don't do this for money. This is not, some big bank account item for me. I'm doing it because I love you guys and because I'm trying to produce this message. to more people. So please go like it and subscribe. Even if you always listen on Spotify, Apple, etc., go subscribe on YouTube. It really helps us out. And we're giving you a lot of free, amazing stuff. So you kind of owe me. First time I've ever said that on a podcast.
Take it. Take it.
Yeah.
And run with it.
Yeah. Well, Jonathan, man, it was fantastic. I bet we're going to do some more collaboration in the future. It sure feels like it. So appreciate you being here, brother.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right, derelicts. Until next time, we'll see you.